Thank you so much. Good to be here with all of you today, where it seems like beautiful Chicago fall has finally decided to show up. I'm not sure if I'm happy about it or not, but it's going to be in the 60s today, so I guess that's okay. I'm Kim Svoboda. My company is Aspiration Catalyst, and Kathy and I are kindred spirits. We've met before, and I also do leadership, coaching, and consulting, and high-performance team development. So I love to work with my clients to help them become better leaders and also make their teams excuse-proof and goal-crushing. So my background was 25 years at technology companies where I built and led sales organizations for them. So I worked for CDW for about 18 years. Then I worked for US Cellular, which was right down the road here, where I got to learn this crazy maze of roads around here. And then I worked for Adobe for a bit. And then I worked for a company called Insight, which is sort of similar to CDW, but we focus mainly on the Fortune 100. That particular job was my last corporate role. I had $1 billion P&L. I was on O'Hare, and I were definitely on a first-name basis because I was on the road 80% of the time. And I had 2 children who were 7 and 11, and they still sort of liked to hang out with me at that point. But it was sort of hard to do because I was never home. So when the company was reorging the sales department, I raised my hand, I took a package, and I left. And I said, okay, what do I want to do when I grow up? But before that, when you leave a job because of so much travel and you're gone so much, what do when you leave the job? You travel. So we took 8 months as a family. We went around the world. We visited 5 continents and 26 countries. We homeschooled our kids. I don't think I did a very good job with that, to be honest. But luckily, they were still in elementary, so no lasting scars from that, I don't think. But we broadened their perspectives and ours by being so many amazing places and meeting so many amazing people. When I was out on the road, I'm like, I've always had this dream of starting my own business, but I've been sort of scared. Being in a big Fortune 500 company brings a lot of benefits, right? I've got good salary, good bonus, good stock options, like benefits, all that stuff. Can I walk away from that? And I thought, well, geez, if you're brave enough to travel the world with your family for 8 months, surely you're brave enough to start your own business. So try it out and see what happens. And I'm happy to say that it was 4 years ago, and I've steadily been building my business, and I'm not looking back. So I love the opportunity to work with lots of different clients and lots of different companies. I work with companies from like small businesses, like 50 employees, up to big businesses with thousands of employees. And one of the things that I do is leadership development. And that's where executive presence falls into. So I'm so glad to be here with you today to share this with you. So who in here feels like executive presence is something that they could really use some help on? Anybody? All right, good. All right, well, you're in the right room, so glad to see you here. And here's what we're going to, this is what we're going to talk about today. Our agenda is, we're going to first define what is executive presence. What are some of the behavior codes, right, that define it, as well as how do we figure out how to fit in when sometimes we don't feel like we fit in, and then a little bit about mindset, right? It all sort of starts on the inside, what shows on the outside. And how I think about executive presence is from early on in my career, I started off at CDW, as I mentioned, in sales, right? So I was just an individual contributor building relationships with clients. And pretty early on, I got picked to be one of the 7 people who was interviewing to become a sales manager. I think I'd been with the company maybe around 2 years at that point. And I was so excited because I was like, wow, I can't believe they saw something in me so early and that they think that I could potentially be a manager. I was by far the newest person who was selected, and I was the only woman. And I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. So like, even if I don't get this, which I really hope I do, I'm glad to just be in the mix for it. And so I worked really hard. I prepared my presentation, and the presentation was to be on what would you do if you were sales manager. And so I got up in front of what I affectionately refer to as the panel of death, the CEO, the CFO, the COO, all these people who were like the revered leaders of the organization, and there's me. I don't know anything. I'm 25 years old. Like, I'd pretty much just graduated from college. Like, what can I tell you? You know, and I think I sort of, my knees were knocking, my voice was, you know, wavering, and I was terrified because I was afraid that not only was I not going to potentially get the job if I screwed it up, but I also wasn't going to have the one that I was, you know, that I had at the moment. And so we went through the presentations, and, you know, I gave it my best shot, but I was like, I don't know how good that was. And my fears were confirmed as the president called me into his office later, and he goes, you know, I liked what you had to say, but the way that you said it, like, it was sort of distracting. And he said, have you ever thought about tape recording yourself? And I was like, oh. You guys remember what tape recorders are, right? When I speak to younger audiences, they're like, what? And so I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about doing that. He's like, I do it whenever I'm going to speak. I still tape record myself, and it helps me, right, figure out my word choice and the cadence and all of that. And I was like, okay, cool, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. So needless to say, I didn't get the job. Right? My peer did. That was cool. He did a good job. But a couple months later, he did come and pick me to start up a new division for the company. And I said, why me? Like, why me? Like, I don't know that my ideas were any better than anyone else's. And he said, you have a presence about you, Kim. And I know that whatever I give you, you're going to figure out how to get it done. And I was like, oh, okay, good. You know, so that was the beginning, I think, of my sort of journey around executive presence. So let's talk about you. So let's figure out, so when do you know that you need help? What maybe have you potentially heard from a boss or from peers, or maybe you're just thinking about it on your own? I've got an action guide in front of you, so if you want to go ahead and open that up to the page that, let's see, I'm going to grab an extra one here, then I can show you. Maybe take a look at that list and figure out what things might be a challenge for you. All right, so take a moment to do that. So the choices are lack strong communication skills, right? Has anyone ever said that to you, or do you feel like that's a challenge? Maybe doesn't command the respect that you'd like to have. I was just on the phone with a client yesterday, and she's like, this is my issue right here. I don't feel like I can hold the room. I don't command the respect that I want to hold, right, when I'm talking with my peers. There are things that they should be utilizing me for, and they're not utilizing me because they don't see me that way. What can I do about that? Not motivating to others, right? Needs to be more seasoned, right? Sometimes those are words that we'll hear. Not leadership material, not client-facing, better behind the scenes, or can't carry the room. So take a look at that, and then maybe just check the boxes next to the ones that you think might be areas that you want to work on. And if you're already amazing at executive presence, you could also think about this in terms of the people that you lead. Right? So what are some of their challenges? Okay, so now I'd like you to flip back to the first page. And I'd like you to take a minute to write down some notes around what does executive presence mean to you? And then I'd also like you to list a couple people that you think are really good examples of executive presence. So when I think of executive presence, I think of this person, right? So it might be famous people, or it might be just people that you know in your life. But write down a couple names. What's executive presence mean to you? Yeah. Is it Phil?
Some people get up in front of a group and they find, or it's easy for them to get and keep other people's attention. And then on the other side of that interaction, people who are in the room, they want to listen and understand what the person is going to say, because it's typically something that's impactful.
Wonderful.
You know, it will affect what they're doing and what's happening.
Yeah, great definition. Okay, so someone who can capture the attention, and then everybody's like, okay, I know they're going to say something good, so I want to make sure I'm listening in and I'm listening well. Good. Anything else to add to that? Yeah.
Someone who projects confidence and can connect with the people in the room or the audience.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've got a good story about that later too. Thanks for adding that in. Yeah, Tom, did you have something?
I'd say a person or a group that stays above the fray, but directs others to complete the tasks.
Stays above the fray. What do you mean when you say that?
That it's a sheet, or if they are a group that more or less says, this is our goal, this is our mission, this is our vision, and you figure out a way to.
Okay, great. They can keep people sort of on task, motivated towards the big picture. Yeah, awesome, good. Other things to add on to this? Yeah.
Someone who's engaged as opposed to detached. So not so above the fray
Yeah,
that you are unapproachable.
right.
But that you're engaged at the right level.
Ah, wonderful. Okay, good. So someone that you can connect with, not someone that you feel intimidated by, maybe, or yeah, they're too much above me. I can't, talk with them. Yeah, Vince.
I'd say it's almost like somebody has the ability to listen and process, and not, so it makes someone else feel that, that what they say, what they feel, whatever, has some purpose.
Yes, and matters, right? Like I hear you, and what you say matters. That's awesome. Great. Did you have something else to add on? I thought I saw another hand back there. Yeah. Judd.
Leads by example.
Leads by
and
example.
Yeah, walks the talk.
Good. Yeah. Yep. So people watch what you do more than they listen to what you say, right? This is really unfortunate with children. I tell them all the right things to do, but then they do what I do, right? So if I'm not doing all the right things, I've got a daughter who's turning 16 next month, and she speeds. I don't know where she gets that. Must be my husband. Any other things to add on? Yeah.
Another way I think that people can engage with your team and so forth is to share maybe failures and admit, be humble enough to say that.
Yeah.
And go out and say how they've changed and how they would expect others. I think it's...
Yeah, it's okay to be vulnerable, right, as a leader. I remember one of the best leaders that I saw exhibit that behavior. I worked for U.S. Cellular for a number of years, and Jack Rooney was the CEO. And boy, that man could have a whole room full of people in tears in a matter of about 30 seconds. And it was because he would share stories that were 100%, not because he was yelling at us, although that might have happened from time to time, but usually because of the stories that he would tell. They were so touching, and it was about our customers and how we'd done something really great to do, to save the day for them. And it was just like he'd have the whole room captured. So I love that vulnerability. He was a big CEO guy, but he was very willing to be vulnerable. Yeah, what else? Okay, so who are some examples? There are some names out there. Who do we think are good examples? Yeah, Michael.
I had Warren Buffett,
Warren Buffett.
Bill Gates, and Barack Obama.
Okay, yeah, good. Wonderful examples. Who else? My husband's actually met Warren Buffett. He worked for a Berkshire company for a while. But he has a bobblehead of the other guy, Charlie Munger, but everybody thinks that that's Warren. What else? Who else are good examples? Yeah, Vince? John Wayne. Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, you definitely... I think we're good here. I think we're good. What else? Who else are good examples? How about some women? I haven't heard any women yet. Kathy?
Oprah.
Oprah, yeah.
Part of it is, the questioning, the curiosity about her, the great listening skills. Carlucci arena. I was trying to think of some other, and Melanie Boone here in Chicago. I think she has awesome executive presence.
What does she? I don't know her. What does she do?
She is. I'm trying to think who she's with now. I mean, she's led. She's with Vistra. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's led large financial.
Oh, wonderful.
Groups, and so she's on the speaking circuit a little bit. Some of us who in the room who know Harry Kramer, the former CEO of Baxter and professor at Northwestern, talk about demonstrating humility and great storyteller and values and all these things that we talked about. He's a great example.
Thank you. Great examples. Any others? Yeah.
I think Tulsi Gabbard, the representative from Hawaii, is running for president on the Democratic slate. She's got, I think, a very good...
Oh, wonderful. Great. I'm not familiar with her yet, but I probably need to be. Awesome. All right, great. Good examples. So thanks for sharing those. So let's keep some of those people in mind as we are going through the rest of the material today. So here's what I'd like you to do next. I'd like you to think about conducting an executive presence audit. So that's at the bottom of your page. So remember where you did that checklist there. So who will you reach out to? Who do you trust to provide feedback to you? So, asking for their help, first and foremost, and requesting that they please tell me the real deal, right? Tell me what you really think. I really do care. What is the best response to feedback that you receive? What should you say when you get feedback from someone?
Thank you.
Thank you, exactly, right? Not yes, but. Well, the reason why I did that, yeah, no. Just thank you. Yeah, because it's their perception, right? And that you're going to learn a lot from that. I feel like for me, the best source of feedback was always from my peers. My peers were always sort of the most unfiltered, the most honest. There was nothing to sort of gain or lose by sharing the information from me. So my peers were always a great resource. Here's what you can ask them. What do you think the general perception is of me? What could I potentially be doing differently that might impact my success, right? What do you see I could be doing better in terms of executive presence? And then express your gratitude and thank them for the feedback. And then when you see the trend, that's when you know you want to take action, right? What one person says may not necessarily be the thing that you want to move forward on, but when you start to see the trends, that's when you know that you've hit on to something, and that's something to work on. All right, so maybe just take a moment to write down maybe some names of people that you would reach out to. And you could also put a goal down there. By when will you do it? Did you guys know I was going to put you to work today?
I'm sorry, what was the second question you just had to ask? The first question was, what is the general perception?
Yeah, and then what do you think would have the biggest impact on, my success? So, if I could fix this one thing or do this one thing better, that would make me more successful, what would that be? Yeah. So the feedback I got a lot was, you're really good at talking, Kim. You could be better at listening, right? So I always think of, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. But that was a harder one for me. And not that I thought I had things that were more important to say or whatever, but I'll fill the space. I feel responsible to fill the space sometimes when it's quiet. And that's not always the right thing to do. So listening, right, is something that I've always been working on. All right, great. So executive presence, there are 3 main components to executive presence. They're gravitas, communication, and appearance. So which do you think is the most important of the 3? Which one?
Communication.
Communication, number 1, okay? Who else thinks communication is the most important thing? A couple of others, okay. Do I have any other votes? What?
Gravitas?
You think gravitas? Very
They're
good.
about equal myself.
You think they're equal? Communication and gravitas, a tie? You think all 3 are equal, Vince says. Appearance.
I think appearance communicates.
Appearance communicates for you sometimes, right? Okay. Is that what you were going to say?
I was going to say that you're projecting an image as well as saying things, and largely all of that could be communication, though I assume your communication means how exactly do you voice your views, your opinions, how do you make those statements?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, good. So communication, right? How are you communicating? And there's a lot to communication, isn't there? It's not just what you say, but it's also how you say it and the nonverbal cues that you're giving if you're in person. Okay, so I think Judd was sort of a ringer here because he did see this presentation before. I don't know if exactly he remembers, but so 67%, right? Gravitas is the most important thing. 28% communication, only 5% appearance. Isn't that interesting? Yes, I'm going to. Thank you. Absolutely. 100%. So gravitas is the core characteristic, and it's knowing your stuff cold. So it's about, right, having a confidence about your level of knowledge And I think about it like double clicking, like double click, yep, I can go down another level, double click, yep, I can go down another level, like I know my stuff, I really know my stuff. I'm guessing in this room, you guys are quite good at that. You guys know your stuff, right? If we're finance executives, right, it's important that we know our stuff quite well. And so that's what gravitas is. Gravitas wins with 67% of all senior leaders. So think of C-suite executive level. They believe this is the most important component and the most heavy-weighted characteristic. Were you going to add something on, Jerry? Or did someone have a hand up over here?
Yeah, I was going to take a risk here. Maybe it's a matter of timing, but in my judgment, right away in appearance, if you come walking through the door, and I've seen people come here, they got blue jeans on, and they know that we're senior financial leaders, and so on and so forth. So, I don't know, I'm not sure this is a poll, but I guess in my opinion, maybe this is one of my weaknesses. Maybe I should not judge that person, but as soon as I do, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not going to come up and try to talk with them. Or they're going to have to do a little bit harder sell job on me because you know better. And I've seen some people come in here more than once with just, they look like staff account maybe. If that makes sense. So I got a different approach or a different.
Yeah, no, I think it depends on your industry also. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Provisors. It's a networking group. I'm a leader actually in Provisors. And a lot of my group are attorneys. And they are always impeccably dressed. I sort of feel like I always have to have my game upped when I'm with the attorneys, right? Because sometimes I might dress a little more casually when if I'm not seeing clients that day. But if I'm going out to lunch with them or doing something with them, I'm like, oh, I better wear the dress, But I think you do try to match like the group that you're going to be with, and I think that does matter. But what we find is that that's a little bit more surface, right? Like it might be your first impression versus if you get to know the person and then you find that they have gravitas and their communication is good, then you might be like, well, I don't really think they dress very appropriately for the setting, but they seem to really, really know their stuff. And I think they are worthy of my attention. So it might just take a little bit longer, like you said, right, to dive in. Yeah, did you want to add something on?
I'm not quite sure I'm yet fully bought in your definition of gravitas, because I think the executive presence, I think the gentleman up front said, for example, Barack Obama, when he ran for president, he didn't know squat at that moment because he only had local political experience. So he ran with impeccable executive presence, which I fully agree, on a ticket that he didn't have the double-click knowledge that you said at all.
Yes.
And that's where I was like, is that, so I agree with, you have to present gravitas.
Yep.
But there's a difference between knowing always the double-click knowledge, as you put it, and having that aura, I guess. So.
Yep, some people have just amazing charisma, don't they? And yeah.
So what is gravitas? It's not, I think that if it's 67%, we need to grasp it a little better, maybe?
Okay. Did you want to add something on, Kathy?
No, I agree with the gravitas. I think, too, if you have gravitas, you are effective on the appearance and the communication side. So you're conscious. I mean, there's a level of awareness and sophistication and polish if you've got the gravitas to do all those other things.
Good. Okay, so not one without the other. They're not mutually exclusive. It's a package. But if they're weighting them, right, they'll say, the knowledge matters a lot more to me than how they look and how they say things. Yeah.
I think back to the appearance, I think norms are changing.
Yeah. Yes.
Broadly. And I think knowing and understanding who you're going to be engaging with, the organization that you're walking into. I personally had an experience, was working for a rapidly growing organization headed by, a millennial.
Yeah.
And was attending a dinner meeting. as the CFO of this organization.
Right.
You know, I'm traveling from Chicago up to Toronto, and, you know, it's a nice restaurant, we're going to dinner, and it's in the middle of summer, it's nice and warm, but I still wear a nice dress, etc. And the investors, members of the board, and everybody showed up in shorts and t-shirts.
No.
I missed the memo.
Right.
And it was like that consistently. The next day at the official board meeting, they are in jeans.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to learn to adjust.
Yeah.
Because I was then perceived as not being in touch, not being able to relate.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do, right? It's about what you
Yeah.
bring to the table. Your gravitas has to show through, right?
Yes.
So I think more and more we see it consistently. I have heard a lot of times that people who dress up so much are seen as stuffy, as unapproachable. So it is important, I think, to be able to better read that.
Know your audience.
It's changing dramatically.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Yeah.
So, go back to the gravitas.
Yeah.
I hate being an audience member and trying to answer questions, but I'm thinking about the same things.
Uh-huh.
And, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but
No?
like with if you take Obama or a lot of people when they're younger, so maybe a millennial who's running a company, they can't have the experience that is like you just can't, right? Obama was never, no one can have experience in president, but like he came across as so knowledgeable. So like he could have knowledge of things he's never done, or she, you know, any of these people could do that. So I think that might be that gravitas. That's, you know, like you still somehow appear to be very knowledgeable and capable, even though if you think about it, it's like, wait, he never actually did any of this. You know, it's I don't know, I think that is sort of gravitas. I try to, you know, give a description.
Being credible, being confident. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Did you want to?
When I think about it, I just think the two at the bottom sort of support the top. I think about how would I go about getting gravitas? What are some concrete things I could work on? I could work on my communications, I could work on my appearance, and that would then give me gravitas. I don't know how to get gravitas. I mean, how do you do that? You work on those other things.
Yeah.
And then, you know.
Well, I think, yeah. Well, and gravitas is knowledge, like knowledge, experience. You know, that's what gravitas. I think that's what you work on there. Yeah, Michael.
But on the reverse, you take somebody this fellow that started WeWorks.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a guy who was in a few years was able to create a monster company, raise a lot of money, and then all of a sudden, when he's exposed through a public offering, he's out on the street.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, gravitas can go, you know.
You can use it for good or for evil, or. Right.
But eventually, you get caught. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, right. Yeah.
Have sufficient gravitas, so he had enough skills and knowledge and vision to be able to get.
He got it to, yeah.
He wasn't mature enough in his leadership capabilities to be
To
able
take it to the
truly
next.
Take it to the next
Yeah.
level. So would it be a lack of gravitas in that
Could
case?
be, yeah, it could be in that particular case, or being, you know, there might be other things too, right? Just sort of out of touch with, right, what the market was looking for and how your company truly was showing up. Yeah.
But how many people did he buffalo before he was uncovered?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even the people that underwrote him, they should have called
Well,
him out
that's,
right away.
and that's not the only time we've seen that story, and it won't be the last,
That's true,
right?
so.
Won't be the last. I do think about like appearance. Like I think it's interesting when your point, and then like you think about like Steve Jobs, right? He wasn't like a fancy dresser. Mark Zuckerberg, right? Wears the same thing every day, and it's like what, a t-shirt and jeans or whatever. So it's just it is interesting. I think if you are, I guess, big enough in other areas, you can sort of carry it. Yeah. Other things, yeah, Jerry.
You know, I wrote down here too, I thought your first comment was gravitas is confidence in knowing your stuff. But I think of President Obama, and I can't remember back when he was a senator for the state of Illinois, but I mean, my image of him, he was put together, very confident speaker, very confident with people, didn't really vary in terms of the way he approached or communicated. So to me, he had very confidence, he had control of himself. And I think that's
strong executive presence. Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, he documented he documented it by writing books. I mean, it wasn't like he made the stuff up. He kind of backed it up by his writings.
Yep.
Now, you may not believe everything, but
Yeah.
at least he was confident enough.
He was stayed on message. We'll talk about congruence also as part of this and how important that is. Good. Okay. So then communication, right? We've talked about communication, right, being 28% and a third of it. So here's a couple of other things about gravitas that maybe will help sort of illustrate it further. So the definition in Merriam-Webster dictionary is seriousness, right? The bearing of an individual or the treatment of a subject. So here are some important traits of gravitas, and we've mentioned some of these already in our discussion. So confidence, right? Coming across as someone who, right, believes what they're saying, right? They're confident in what they're saying. Decisiveness, right, can be another quality. Integrity and truthfulness, right? Do they actually do what they say? Do they walk the talk, I think was said earlier. EQ, so having emotional intelligence, understanding, right, what's the feel of the room or the people that I'm speaking with, the person, and how am I feeling, and then how do I take that into account. Reputation and standing, and vision, right? So those are all qualities of gravitas. So decision making, if you think about, well, let's talk about confidence actually first. So the person owns who they are, they own the room, they're often someone who is very credible, they might be sought after, right, to talk about different things, whatever their topic is, and used for good or evil. When someone delivers their content with great confidence, even if I didn't formerly believe what they were saying, it might make me pause and listen harder if they speak with conviction. Right? Decisiveness, this is often cited as an important leadership trait, but it's not always about speed, right? There's an element that's effective use of time, but it's also about making the right decision at the right time. Confidence and decisiveness combined also could mean grace under fire, keeping a cool head, which sort of relates to emotional intelligence as well. And then integrity and truthfulness. So in today's landscape of alternative facts and fake news, I'll stay away from politics here. This particular topic or facet of gravitas is being tested. But instead, I wanted to share a story with you about congruence. So there's a story of a woman in India who was upset that her son was eating too much sugar. Has anyone heard this story before? No? Okay. No matter how much she chided him, he continued to satisfy his sweet tooth, so she was very frustrated. So she decided to take her son to see his great hero, Mahatma Gandhi. She approached the great leader respectfully and said, "Sir, my son eats too much sugar. It's not good for his health. Would you please advise him to stop eating it?" Gandhi listened to the woman carefully, turned and spoke to her son. "Go home and come back in 2 weeks." The woman looked perplexed and wondered why he had not asked the boy to stop eating sugar. She took the boy by hand and went home. 2 weeks later, she returned, boy in hand. Gandhi motioned for them to come forward, and he looked directly at the boy and he said, "Boy, you should stop eating sugar. It is not good for your health." The boy nodded and promised he would not continue the habit any longer. And as they walked away, the boy's mother turned to Gandhi and said, "Why didn't you tell him 2 weeks ago when I brought him here to see you?" And Gandhi smiled. And he said, "Mother, 2 weeks ago, I was still eating sugar myself." So he lived in such integrity that he would not allow himself to give advice to anyone else that he would not follow himself. So that's pretty cool, huh? EQ, right, is the next one. The ability to build trust by having both self and situational awareness. And then reputations, I think a lot about, people talk about their personal brand. I don't know if you guys have had any presentations on that. But being intentional about how you want to be perceived and, acting accordingly. And then vision and charisma, creating a picture of the future and getting others excited about being part of it. Right? Isn't that how we get people moving to action? So employees often have several key questions on their mind. Where are we headed? Why does it matter? And what's the last question? What's in it for me? Yeah, we all do, right? We all have that question. A lot of times they're also thinking are you the person I want to follow, right? And hopefully the answer is yes. So there's an interesting fact here. The top 3 attributes here are cited as the most important for women to work on, and the bottom 3 are most important for men. What do you guys think about that? Why would that be? Yeah, Mike.
Flip sort of the natural tendencies of each gender.
Kind of maybe what's perceived, right? Yeah. Yeah. What else? Any other comments on that?
Historical roles,
Yeah, could be.
especially for us that have been around for a while.
Yep. Yep. So maybe sort of the way things have always been, right? Now maybe it's changing now. I will tell you that when my clients come to work with me, particularly when I'm working with women, they talk a lot about developing their confidence. And it's funny to me because they're really smart and they really know their stuff. And I'm like, what is it that you have to be not confident about, And that, it's just very interesting to me. But that is a challenge. There's a woman I was coaching recently, extremely knowledgeable, but always, sort of her inner voice tells her she doesn't know enough. And trust me, she knows more than probably anybody else in the room anytime she's in there. And so it's flipping that switch off and developing that confidence for her. All right. So let's also talk about gravitas blunders. So here's what not to do. Jokes. Okay, the jokes that I grew up hearing versus the jokes today, you can't tell those anymore, right? Like it's changed a lot. You are not, it's not okay. It was very interesting. I was listening to an interview last night on NPR, and Conan O'Brien was on, and he was with Terry Gross on Fresh Air. And she was asking him about, like, how has Me Too impacted the jokes that you can tell? And he was like, I don't know. He was a comedian, right? He's like, well, I think I'm actually sort of telling the same ones. He's like, but here's the way that I do things. I make fun of myself first before I'm making fun of others. So maybe that sort of keeps me safe. But it was a really interesting thing. So be thoughtful about the joke that you're about to tell in the company that you're in. Is that really how you want people to think about you? You might have thought it was really funny, but is it funny in this environment? Inflated ego, bullying, right? This is another way to, sort of, I always think about this, like, as a leader, don't you want people to be committed to following you versus complying with it or feeling like they have no choice? I feel like when you're bullying or you're pounding the table, making people do stuff, it's really short term, right, in gain. They might do it because they're afraid or, whatever, but when you're not looking, they're not going to be, I don't think they're going to be doing, right, whatever it is that you want them to do. But if they're committed to you and they feel like, right, they're following an amazing vision and a great leader, then they're going to do it even when you're not looking. Lack of integrity, right? So when I think about, like, when your eyes don't match your mouth, I feel like sometimes when people aren't saying something that's exactly true, like there's a mismatch and I don't know exactly what it is, but my mind's going, something's not adding up here. And so we don't want that, right? We want people to be 100% focused on our message and not questioning it. Sexual impropriety, we won't even go into that one, but flip-flopping, right? If you're sort of seen as indecisive, and then shallowness, right? So those are the not to-dos.
So, I was going to say Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
He's considered probably a great leader because of his vision and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think he may have violated a couple of those.
He did.
The bullying and
yeah.
The ego. And
he
all
was
that
a
stuff.
tough boss.
Yeah, he was.
He was a tough boss. Yeah.
What about the leader of our country?
Yeah.
He broke every one of those rules.
Well, we could spend all day on that probably, right? Yeah, I mean, I think here's the thing. What's the problem with leaders? They're human. Thank you. 100%. They're human. And who in here is perfect? Oh, other than Michael. Other than Michael, right? No one else raised their hand. So it's, you know what? Nobody has everything, right? And all we can do is continue to try to improve and do our best, right? And some of these would certainly stand out more than others in terms of blunders around gravitas. Here's what you can do. Get deeper in your knowledge base, right? So whatever your topic is that you're presenting on or working in a group, whatever it is, know your stuff. Do your homework. I'm guessing in this room that is not an issue. But some areas it is. When I work with salespeople sometimes, right, they'll maybe rely on their relationship building skills more than really knowing their product. Or the other side, they know their product really well, but their relationship skills are lacking. So know your stuff is important. When I was in sales at CDW, I was one of the few women. And when I would answer the phone, I would, CDW sales, this is Kim, how can I help you? And they'd say, I was waiting for a salesman. I'm like, all right, well, I'm a saleswoman. Can I help you? Well, I don't know. Do you know anything about computers? Well, I don't know. Why don't you try me? I knew my stuff, right? I definitely made sure I knew my stuff because I sort of had that working against me right already because they were like, do you, most of the people I talk to, there are men. Do you actually know your stuff? So I really needed to make sure I knew my product. Be humble, right? This is another one. So we talked about that vulnerability before. Give other people credit. This is also just a huge relationship building thing, right? People are so appreciative when you give them credit for where credit is due. And also we have an opportunity. We can see things from a negative side or we can see things from the positive side. And so when you are being positive and being the light in the room, you attract more positivity as well. So before you make that negative comment, maybe, does that really need to be said? Or could I be saying something differently right now? All right, so that is gravitas. So let's talk about the next two. We've got communication and appearance. Communication is verbal and nonverbal, so it's not all what I say, but it's also how I say it. What's my body language telling you about me, right? There's a lot that goes into it. Connection. Great story on this one. We talked about, someone mentioned connection earlier. I remember when I was getting ready to present to the executive committee. And what I was doing was giving them an update on the division that I was building. I was building the government education division. And I also wanted to secure some resources. And I remember I was getting ready to present the next day, and we had this great consultant that was in our organization who I developed a good relationship with, and he stopped by my desk, and he said, are you ready for tomorrow? And I said, I am ready. I know my stuff. I've got my presentation all ready. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to shine. And he goes, can I just give you some advice on what you just said? And I said, sure. And he said, you don't want to go in there and shine. This isn't a performance, right? You want to go in there and you want to connect with them because you're telling them, right, what you've been doing, and you also want their support on the plans that you have moving forward. And so you want to make sure that you connect with each person in that room so that at the end of your ask, right, everybody's nodding their heads yes. And I thought that was a really good point and something that I hadn't considered before. Make your point, get to the point, be assertive in terms of communication, be present. So we talked about people who are good at listening, and relax, have fun. People like it when someone appears to be having a good time talking about what they're talking about, and that is contagious. So try not to be so serious. All right, appearance is the last one. So polished, I think is important here, as well as knowing your audience. Sometimes people will say you should dress for the job that's 1 or 2 positions higher than yours. I can think of a guy that I worked with who wore a suit to work every day, and it was definitely not our attire, right? This was at CDW, and most of the guys wore red shirts and wrinkled khaki pants that I'm pretty sure they picked up off the floor in the morning before they came to work. But this guy wore a suit every day. He looked sharp. And boy, he was awesome, And people they thought he was a little quirky because he wore this suit every day, but it worked for him. He ended up getting promoted. He now runs one of their offices in Tampa, Florida, has one of the most successful teams in the company. It totally worked for him. So, dress for that job that you would like next. That's a good rule of thumb. I always tell my daughters too, my daughter, they're 15 and 11 now, and dressing for the job you want next or whatever, it's always good to be just a little bit just a little, a little bit nicer maybe than whatever the environment is, you'll hardly ever get dinged for that, but if you're under it, then people will definitely remember. Fitness and wellness too. Everybody doesn't have to, be an elite athlete, but right, good to take care of your appearance. All right. So the superpower of authenticity, the superpower of executive presence, I believe, is authenticity. So Deborah DeHaas, who's the vice chair of Deloitte and chief inclusion officer, has a rule of 10 rules to live by, has a list of 10 rules to live by. And number one is be true to yourself. And so what she says here is stop wanting to be liked so much by people and people pleasing. Don't be a jerk, but don't bend and flex so much that you lose yourself in the process. So focus on your values and then make decisions with that filter. So who in here knows what their top values are? Have you guys ever done like a values exercise? Anybody? Yeah. All right, so what's one of your top values, Tom, if you don't mind sharing?
Humility, I think, is one.
Humility, okay, great. And how do you think that might help you in executive presence, humility?
What I have sort of, it actually, I fostered it too since I found that out. And I try to be the individual that will look at both sides and try to bring them together.
Awesome. Oh, great. Okay, so you're sort of the one who says, I hear what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, here's a place where maybe we can all come together. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I would want you in the room. Yeah. Integrity. Great. And how does that help you, do you think, Judd?
Well, I think financial people obviously have to.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important thing, I think, is integrity, because
Yep.
you're dealing with dollars and cents and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I think it's just, in order to deal effectively and build that gravitas,
Yep.
you need to be seen as somebody that has integrity.
Yep.
And when you're dealing with people and communicating and, sort of
That matters.
interaction.
Yeah. I know when Judd says something, I know it's true. I know he's done his homework. I know that he's, he's got his facts and data to back it up. I don't have to worry about, what he's telling me. I don't have to go investigate further. Yeah, great. So values, I think, can be a great way to make sure that you're staying true to yourself. I think sometimes when it gets, when we're trying to be something that we're not, people smell it a mile away, right? And so being true to yourself. So it's working on the communication, it's working on your gravitas, but still staying true to you, keeping your values top of mind. I also think about cultural fit. So knowing your audience. I think also if we're CFOs or finance people, understanding we have an important seat at the table in terms of the company direction and understanding what is the vision and how, and you being the person who can really make the connections between what we do and how it impacts our numbers and how it impacts our performance. That's a really important role. So making sure that you're 100% aligned with your CEO and other senior leaders and able to speak from a business acumen perspective as well as from a facts and data perspective. Your first team is absolutely critical, to your performance, as well as having mentors and advocates is also really important. Who knows the difference between a mentor and an advocate? Yeah, Vince.
An advocate promotes you outwardly, and a mentor is more inward or tries to help you grow personally.
Yes, exactly. So a mentor, people may not know who your mentors are. That might be a little bit more between you and them, and probably someone who maybe you can have confidential conversations with and get advice. And an advocate is someone who will go out and sponsor you, right? The person who says, wow, you really need Lisa on your team. She's amazing. I've seen her work. She is 100% the person that you need for this job. That's what an advocate is. Those are also good people to help you with your executive presence and to give you that guidance to help you improve and grow. Another way to improve your executive presence is to also develop your growth mindset. So I think about, there's a really good book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There, right? Marshall Goldsmith wrote it. And it's so true, isn't it? Like whatever made you successful before isn't the thing, unfortunately, that's going to help you get to the next level. You have to sort of continue to push yourself. And the more you push yourself and grow, the more confidence you will build. So who wants to ask me what I did this weekend? Aren't you curious? Don't you want to know what I did this past weekend? What did I do? I did my first half Ironman in Augusta, Georgia. Holy cow, that was really, really hard, and I was absolutely terrified. All summer, I was terrified as I was training for this race because I was like, can I really do this? I don't know. A mile swim, right, 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike, 13-mile run, which was not a run, it was a walk for me because it was 95 degrees and over 100 heat index in beautiful Augusta, Georgia. Man, oh man. But what a great, so why am I telling you this? Well, because I set a goal, I went after it, I achieved it, and my confidence boost in this area feeds into all different areas of my life, right? It makes me more confident about all the different things that I try. So what are those things that you can be doing in your life to push you, right? To grow, to stretch, to reach, that will not only impact you in that area, but also, right, in your business too. All right, so let's build an action plan before we wrap up here. So your plan is, I'd like to be seen as someone who is, right, and you can write your statement there. I'll give you a couple minutes to do this, and then we'll wrap up. What are your EP strengths and challenges? And then how will you apply your strengths to address your challenges? And then what does success look like for you? You could even start there. Some people like to start with the vision first, so you could start at the bottom and work your way up. So take a couple minutes to do that, so you can take action on some of the things that we've talked about today. So here's a stat. 80% of all managers, leaders, believe that they are at or above average as a leader. 80%, right? I'm good, I'm pretty good, or better.
Does it like that apply to just about everything?
Maybe. I don't know. I only know this study, but when we surveyed their people, right, the people that work for them, how many of them do you think said that they were at or above average? 20%. Yes, about 20%. So there's a pretty big gap there between, right, sometimes the way we perceive ourselves versus the way that our teams perceive us. And so the good news is we can work on that. Yeah, did you want to add something in there, Michael?
What's the measurement?
What is the, well, I think it was perception. It was perception, right? So it was like, they took the group of leaders and it was like, how do you think you are, in terms of your leadership skills? So it's pretty subjective, right? But I think the interesting point is the gap, right, between the way the people feel about it and the way the leaders see themselves. And I love this quote from Vince Lombardi because he says, right, leaders are not born, right? They're made, just like everything else, through hard work. And when you have that growth mindset and you're willing to try new things and see things from a different perspective and stretch, then that will help. You're going to make progress. You're going to absolutely, right, do better. The fixed mindset says, I'm afraid, I already know everything, I'm already, and that, you wouldn't be in this group if you had the fixed mindset, I'm guessing. So take that growth mindset, apply your action plans, and work on your executive presence, and share this with your teams. I think, there's some great tools in here in terms of things that you can do with your teams. One of the books that I've used to research this is Executive Presence by Sylvia Ann Hewlett. Highly recommend that book. She does a really nice job of laying it out and can be a great guide to dive into this topic deeper. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. We're at our time. And then I just put up more about the work that we do up here behind me. But you guys have been fantastic, so thank you so much.